Sorry. Good morning, everyone. There are a couple spots up front. There's a couple spots right in here if you want to try and find a seat. You're welcome to. We'll get started here in just a second. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are here at ICCW's first Lunch and Learn for the 2020 year. Today we're going to be talking about FMLA, leave, breastfeeding, all of the sort of family sort of issues that we face. Is everyone in here a state employee? Any non-state employees? Okay, good, because you would be in the wrong room. No. I just wanted to give a quick overview of ICCW to let you know, in case you're not aware of our organization, our group, and the work that we do. We were established in 1977 by executive order of Governor Tom Judge. We work to represent employees of state agencies on issues including equal employment, sexual harassment, professional development, and work-life balance. We've worked with every governor since Governor Judge to improve opportunities for and participation of women in state government. We put on the Excellence in Leadership Awards, which you may be familiar with. We are also responsible for promoting Take Our Daughters and Sons to Work Day. And this series, which you are at the first of, and we hope you continue to attend our monthly Lunch and Learns. So we will have some events coming up for the remaining months of the spring. In February, we're going to be talking about retirement. We're going to have the MPARA folks here to talk. In March is Women's History Month, and so we will have Mary Jane Bradbury, who will be doing some performances of women in Montana history, which should be really exciting. We're going to have multiple events through the month of March. And I have to refresh my memory. April and May, we're going to be talking about women's health, outdoor opportunities, and different programs. So we hope you join us for those as well, and we'll have advertisements for those forthcoming with a little bit more lead time. So today we have 4 HR experts with us today. Lisa Colligan, Carol Ann Davis, Christy Stapley, and Amanda Yoakum, and they're from a range of agencies, and I'm sorry that I'm standing in front of them. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn the mic over for just a quick overview of kind of a Cliff's Notes on FMLA, and then we're going to turn to some questions. I have a couple guiding questions, and then we really want to hear your questions as well. All right? All right. So...
Yeah, I thought we'd start by telling you who's who. So I'm Lisa Colligan, the first one on your sheet with the State Human Resources Division. And I guess what my agency does is we create the policies, including the leave policies. So we're the ones who develop those policies in my office, and I'm generally the policy person in the State Human Resources Division. So I think that's why I'm here.
Hello, I'm Christy Stapley. I'm the Human Resource Manager over at DNRC. I've been in state government for 15 years. I did work over at D of A for a little while, little stretch. And I've worked at 3 other agencies, and I've had 2 babies while working at the state. So we have some personal experience too.
All right, hello everybody. I'm Amanda Yoakum, and I'm the last person on your list. I work at the Department of Revenue. I have nothing to do with your taxes, so don't hate me for that. I have been at a couple different agencies. I've worked for the state for a little over 4 years, and I have had a baby as well, so I know about the FMLA and most of the topics we're going to cover today.
I'm Carol Ann Davis. I'm the Assistant HR Director for Public Health and Human Services. I've been in state government now for a little over 11 years, the majority of that being in HR, so advising and helping with policies, planning leave, and whatnot. And I have had 3 babies while working for state government, all with different agencies, so I'm also very familiar with utilizing the policies and just questions and planning and stuff like that.
Okay. So I was asked to give a little overview of family medical leave, so I'll start there, and then I think we'll jump into questions. So what family medical leave is, it's actually a federal law that applies to us here as a state employer that basically provides you job-protected, unfortunately unpaid leave for qualifying family and medical reasons. And some of those reasons, like we already mentioned, are the birth of a child, also placement of a child for foster care or adoption, and then medical reasons such as your own serious health condition, a serious health condition of an immediate family member, such as your spouse, son, daughter, or a parent. And then there are a couple of military-related reasons that you can take family medical leave as well. If you have a family member who's a service member who needs care, or something called qualifying exigency leave, where you can get leave if somebody is deploying or as part of a call to active duty to kind of help you as a family get prepared for that. So those are the general reasons why you can take family medical leave. And to be eligible, you have to have been an employee with the state for at least a year. That doesn't have to be consecutive. So if you've gone and come back, you at least have to get a year. And then in the 12 months before you take leave, you have to have been working at least a part-time schedule. And that includes any time in a pay status. So if you were taking leave as part of that part-time schedule, that counts too. And I think that's a quick overview of family medical leave, but if we want to jump into questions.
Sure. So I wanted to start by asking everybody if they would just take a minute and answer what is either the most common misconception that you hear about FMLA leave and sort of this broad umbrella of related topics, or what would you categorize as maybe the most frequently asked question that you're getting about these within your position or your experience?
I think one of them would be that FMLA is paid. There's some confusion around that. It is an unpaid leave that you can use concurrently with your other leave types that you've accrued. The other would be that if you have large leave balances, let's say maybe you have a lot of vacation or sick leave and you're going out for something, that you would utilize all of that before FMLA kicks in, and that's not accurate either. It's simultaneous with that leave that you've already accrued. So you don't exhaust all your leave and then turn to FMLA. If you have a qualifying event, you do FMLA in conjunction with your paid leave.
So the one concern that I've heard the most is that FMLA is a black mark on your record. It's going to hinder you from getting a promotion. You're going to be treated differently. None of those things should happen or hopefully do happen. But it is not a black mark. It is nothing bad in your file. It is what it is.
I guess I'll do two. What kind of leave can you use? Yes, there are times when you're going to have to use sick leave when you're on FMLA. I guess, we kind of have some flexibility about when and what we use leave for. You cannot be required to use your vacation leave. I think that might be a little bit of a misconception out there. But if your absence qualifies for sick leave, then you have sick leave, you are going to have to use at least 20 hours of sick leave a week or some sort of prorated basis if you're not taking a whole week of leave off. And then I guess the other one is can I say no if they want me to take FMLA leave, which is one that Carol Ann brought up. And no, it is the responsibility of your employer to designate FMLA leave. And really what it does is it protects you. You're out on leave, but the law requires you to be restored to the same job, for you to have no black mark or negative impact for your time out. And so it really was a law or protection designed to help employees and not employers, but it is the employer's responsibility to designate your leave as family medical leave when you're out. Anything to add?
I don't think so. Question?
I think we're ready.
I wanted to ask as well for, sorry, get over here for the video, for the ladies on the panel who have sort of utilized these different things, if you might comment just briefly on your experiences and what worked particularly well for you, what challenges you faced, and how you overcame those.
So I've used FMLA for a total of 3 different times. All of them have been related to the birth of a child. I haven't had any other qualifying events, so I'll speak to it, I guess, from that perspective. Each agency I was at worked really well with me, but I think that's also, as an employee, I really thought ahead of the game and talked to HR as soon as I knew that I may need to be utilizing a benefit or I would be out. So I went and I talked to, in my case, I'm usually in HR. So I talked to my boss, which is part of the process anyway. But what I did is I just tried to plan. I was very open and transparent that I was going to need leave probably this amount of time. My leave need became more obvious with time since it was the birth of a child. So I do want you guys to know you don't have to disclose detailed medical information to your direct supervisors. I think that's forgotten sometimes. If you're in this process, that information comes to HR and it stays confidential. Your manager may know like the frequency you may need of leave or something like that because they're responsible for managing it, but they don't need to know your specific medical details. So I did a lot of just pre-planning. I had conversations. I figured out how much leave balance I'd have, what forms I needed done, and got all of that done before the event occurred, because usually, even if it's not the birth of a baby, if it's a surgery or caring for a family member, the actual event itself, you're kind of stressed with all of that other stuff. So as soon as I knew I would need it, I started asking questions, kind of planning out my leave balances and making a plan for myself, and then asking questions about what my options were. So the one thing I would say is if you have an idea on maybe a flexible schedule or some sort of creative solution, don't be afraid to ask. This is about work-life balance so that you can handle whatever it is in your personal life and still handle your professional life also, right? So my biggest advice there is if you have an idea, ask. They might be able to accommodate that. For example, I came back on a reduced schedule after one of my babies and eased back into a full-time schedule. Unless I asked, they didn't even know that I was interested in something like that. The worst case that happens is they say, no, we're not able to do that. However, maybe they have a compromise in something else that would help you more. So definitely ask questions, get creative, think about what you may need ahead of time, and join the sick leave fund if you guys aren't members now. I would say join the sick leave fund. You just have to donate 8 hours to that and have 40 hours remaining after your donation. Once you're a member for 3 months, you can then use it. Correct. Yeah, so we have two things. We have the sick leave fund and the direct grants of sick leave. The sick leave fund is employees that have donated into this pool can then use it if they've exhausted all of their leave and are out for a qualifying reason. And you usually can get 40 hours per pay period, so it'd be like 20 hours a week if you were full-time. You need to be able to use sick leave, so be employed for at least the 90 days, and you have to donate the 8 initially and still have 40 left over. But then in emergency situations where maybe you've exhausted your leave, there's this reserve pool that you can pull on. Then there's also direct grants where you can send a request out to maybe your coworkers or your friends within state government, where if they have leave, they can donate it directly to you and help supplement some of that so you're not going in leave without pay status. The other thing that I found really helpful is if you don't have a lot of leave and you're about to go out on FMLA for something, like Lisa mentioned, there are some requirements where you have to take a minimum of 20 hours of sick leave before you can use leave without pay or other leave types. But getting creative with that too, maybe instead of having a whole pay period or a couple pay periods at the end of your leave where you have no paycheck, you can start thinking ahead of time up front. Maybe you're only claiming 30 hours or 20 hours of leave each each week. So maybe a half a pay period for a full pay period, you're only claiming maybe 20 or 40 hours that pay period, so that it spreads your leave out if you can't go without a full paycheck. I mean, there's all sorts of things like that. It's just knowing your leave balances, how much time you need, and then not being afraid to ask the questions.
I have nothing to add to that. You covered a lot there. So my FMLA experience is very similar to Carol Ann's. I was out to have a baby, and since I am and was in HR when I had my baby, talking to HR and my supervisor at the same time, it was 2 birds with 1 stone. So I essentially took all the same steps. I talked to my supervisor pretty much as soon as I found out, just to kind of give her a heads up, because you have all the appointments and all that kind of stuff. Then, of course, the big chunk of time at the end. So I just let her know kind of what my plan was. I was going to try and flex my schedule as much as I could to help save my sick leave and my vacation, so I had more when I was out after I had my daughter. I had more balances built up. So I was also a member of the sick leave fund, and I strongly promote that to every single employee that I talk to. I think it's a great idea. Yeah, that's mine was pretty easy, but I always recommend, talk to your supervisor. Like Caroline said, you don't have to give them a lot of details. Obviously, if it's a pregnancy, they're gonna figure it out eventually. But if it's for anything else, you don't have to tell them any details if you don't want to. And then after you talk with your supervisor, I always recommend coming to talk to HR.
Oh, I thought of one misconception. No kids, dog owner, and dog hotel only. But one thing too, people ask, if you're not eligible for FMLA yet, can I still take leave if something happens to me? And the answer to that is generally yes. On day one as a state employee, you become eligible for parental and maternity leave. So if you're expecting a child or planning to adopt a child or take on a foster child, just because you aren't eligible for the federal family medical leave yet, doesn't mean you don't have some leave benefits. They're not 12 weeks, they're not as long, but go talk to your boss, talk to your HR, whoever you feel comfortable with in the agency. There are some requirements and benefits for you, even if you don't qualify for family medical leave. And the same goes for a sickness, or if somebody's hurt, or if you need to take care of somebody. As Carol Ann said, ask. You never know what you're going to get unless you ask.
Well, you guys covered a lot, so a little bit different, my story. So I had 2 babies, both of which were high risk. I didn't know that going into it, so I was out for a little bit longer period of time. I was not a member of the sick leave fund, but I did receive grants. And so I did I was trying to work on special projects and things like that to build up a comp time balance. That was with the approval of my supervisor. We had some big projects going on at the time. Those projects also allowed me to work from home a little bit. I quickly found that that was difficult for me. I'm just not a good worker at home. I'm too distracted. So, but the options were there. And so I would just say the state is a really great place to have babies. We're really flexible. The breastfeeding policy, they didn't have that when I had my kids, but I can tell you, it was not an issue. It was just let's figure out something, that's going to work. I think a couple of years after I had my kids, then we had a formal policy, because I don't think it was until 2010 that the federal law came out requiring employers for non-exempt employees to do that. So, so is anyone having a baby here? Do you have any particular questions about leave? Yeah.
And because we are recording this, we have a mic, and we'll need you to speak into the mic so we make sure that we get those questions.
I have a question about how, I know FMLA is 12 weeks, and I'm just coming off of my maternity leave, and for the last 6 weeks I was doing the reduced schedule, so I was logging 20 hours of work and then 20 hours of the FMLA, and I just got a notice kind of updating me on my leave, and I was wondering if it's calculated as 12 weeks, so my week where I was working 20 and doing 20 FMLA, is that one of the full weeks, or is that how is that calculated?
That's a good question. So it's calculated by hours. So the 12 weeks converts into 480 hours in a 12-year period, and so the state does a rolling calendar. So it's 12 months, or the year period. The quote year is from the time that you go out on the event. You start using your leave. but then in your timesheet, it's coded a little bit differently, and that's how we track it. So it's literally like by the hour. So you can either take leave continuous, you can take it intermittent. When you have a child and when you're pregnant, most of the time it's like a portion of continuous and then intermittent when you're coming back and working a reduced schedule. So no, it wouldn't count for the full week. Yep.
If somebody is taking unpaid leave, how do their insurance premiums get paid?
I'll take a try at that one. I'm not 100% that this is accurate. Your employer, your portion, the portion that they pay, they are required to continue to pay. Now, if you're paying extra out of your paycheck for dependents or extra things, it's my understanding that healthcare and benefits is going to bill you for that. But you're covered. That's another benefit of the FMLA. Your employer is required to continue your insurance, at least for you, at least the state share that they put into your insurance coverage. And you pay healthcare and benefits directly if you aren't getting a paycheck.
I'm not going to stand up because I'm shy. On intermittent family medical leave, can they hold, I know they're not supposed to hold it against you. Can that be put on your job performance evaluation because of missing?
No.
But it's not supposed to be. Okay.
FMLA is not a black record, or a black mark on your record. So if you have to be out, if your job requires you to perform 10 widgets a week and you're out part-time, then they have to reduce their expectation of you. So if you're only working 4-hour days and you have to do 10 widgets a week, now you're down to 5 widgets a week.
And so say if that is on your job, your evaluation, and you've been basically handed written reprimands because of your time away, and if you get another one, that they say it's termination. How is that?
So
work?
they're disciplining you for not meeting a full-time.
That's what they're saying. I missed too much work, but they say they're not going by my FMLA. They're not taking that into account, but they are, because.
So have you spoke directly with your HR office, or has this been with your supervisor?
This has been with the supervisor, but I haven't quite went to HR.
So my recommendation would be, so HR, we're not scary people. We're actually just people.
Depends on which one. Right?
But I would recommend, because too, your manager may not fully know everything about FMLA and all of that and the laws or policies. So I would recommend consulting with your HR and even maybe bringing that performance appraisal where it was noted.
Well, it's been going on. It's on a couple of them already.
Okay. Yeah, my strongest recommendation would be to start bringing HR into the conversation, and allowing them to, it could be an educational moment too for the manager.
I don't think it is. If they say they're not using the FMLA they're not taking that into consideration for the time away. So
they're
to me,
saying
that
they've looked at that, removed that from it, and said that you're not meeting the new expectations
right, and that's
that are
not,
set forth.
and it's the FMLA. That's the only. Once in a while you get sick, but it's FMLA that's where I miss
the majority of your time.
Yes.
So
I think they're pretty up on, the
on
FMLA.
the rules or the laws. I would still consult with your HR. There's a lot of times too, maybe one of the generalists or a specialist that is a FMLA ADA expert, and so they might be able to look at the situation and have some different recommendations. But especially if you're to the point where you're looking at potential termination for something, I'd bring it forward and at least have the conversation and see what their recommendations and advisement are.
See, and I've just been keeping everything documented is
Right.
what I've been, because even if I'm late, there's times where I'm just a couple hours late because of the medical issue, and that's included too about being late, and yeah.
So bring that documentation too, because documenting is good, but then if you don't take it to the next step of
Right.
telling someone, then the documentation isn't really gonna help you in this situation. So I would definitely reach out to HR, bring your documentation. And Lisa may be able to speak to this, but if you're uncomfortable with reaching out to the HR in your specific agency for whatever the reason may be, state HR could also help maybe facilitate some of those conversations and advisement. Is that correct?
Sort of correct. We will, I mean, we will likely send you back to your agency, especially for that sort of situation. But if you haven't talked to your HR, definitely do it. If you've talked to them already, then there may be some willingness for us to step in or at least call the person and help facilitate the conversation. But if you haven't taken the step to talk to whoever your agency HR person at all, that's going to be our first recommendation. And yeah, it looks like you've got some things tied together there. You are allowed to discipline for what is considered abuse of sick leave, but if you've gotten approval for FMLA and that's the sick leave you're taking, that does raise some red flags and concerns to me that I think you should take to your HR.
Is there any movement to improve parental leave policies for state employees? And if so, what are they? And then also, how can we help?
Those are all excellent questions. Parental leave as in terms of paid parental leave or just more leave? Real parental leave. As far as paid leave, there are no movements for us internally. We're kind of limited by what the legislator allows us to do. We are looking at for people who aren't eligible for FMLA yet, we are looking at expanding some of the time perhaps that you can take off, but that's all still in the unpaid arena. So you'll likely see some policy proposals this year on maternity and parental leave, but nothing related to pay. That is something that I would tell you to strongly lobby your legislators and governor for, and then we would be happy to implement it. I know that some bills do go up every year. The governor had that equal pay for equal work task force for a while. They were trying some things there. So I'd say people are trying, but yeah, it's not a lot of momentum yet in Montana.
So parental leave, maternity and parental leave is more, it usually is in conjunction with FMLA if you have that. But if you don't, maternity leave is a minimum of 6 weeks usually. Parental leave is for the father for 15 working days. Both unpaid again, but they're just additional leaves for those situations. My question, Lisa, I was wondering when you were talking about what is maybe happening about increasing the benefits provided to state employees in that realm. Has it been talked about at all about being able to use sick leave for the entire 12 weeks without medical certification?
Thanks for putting me on the spot there. I'm going to say yes, it has been. I don't know what direction it's going to go. We are a little bit bound by the statute, and also you have to give equal treatment to both parents, and so there's a lot of that wrapped up in the discussion. That's an issue with family medical leave now. If you were the person who had the baby, you can generally only use sick leave for 6 weeks because sick leave is for recovery and not for bonding with the child. If there was an issue, a medical issue with the pregnancy, you can usually get more time. But if everything's healthy and normal, you're usually stuck with only 6 weeks of sick leave. And well, if you're like me, I've got, 12 hours of vacation and 700 hours of sick leave. So it'd be a lot easier for me if I could use sick leave longer. And so that's the issue there. I would say there has been some discussion. When we put those policies out for proposal, that'd be a big thing to comment on when you see those go out. Maternity and parental leave will be going out this year to sometime this year. I can't tell you when yet, but I know that we're in the process of working on it. It's actually my colleague John Pepeo's policy who's on the ICCW. So that proposal will be coming out this year, and I'm not quite familiar on what's in it, but they go out for public comment. Everybody gets a chance to say something. So that'd be something to comment on when you see that come out.
Hi, I'm Trish Alexander, and I'm responsible for the sick leave fund for the state employees. And I wanted to add something to your comment about you are allowed over 80 hours in a pay period if you have a reason. You don't even have to have a reason anymore, is my understanding. And you are allowed 240 hours of either the sick leave fund if you're a member of the pool, or 240 hours in a 12-month period, doesn't necessarily start on a calendar year, of sick leave grants that you can receive from your fellow employees. So, and I would encourage everybody to donate that 8 hours of either your sick leave, your annual excess leave, or your vacation to the fund, so that if something should happen, you'll get that entire 240 hours. And if anybody has any questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help and keep that sick leave fund going. Tell everybody your name. My name is Trish Alexander, and I work for Healthcare and Benefits Division.
I'm going to start sending sick leave fund calls to you directly, if that's okay.
What other questions do folks have?
So for a sick parent, what if it's an emergency and I need FMLA? I know doctors have to sign all the papers and it has to get approved before the FMLA kicks in. How would that work?
So it's usually designated retroactively. When an emergency happens, hopefully you have an agency that's understanding of that takes some time to get the paperwork done. I know there's a timeline outlined here in the policy. Yeah. So you have about, normally you have to give advance within 30 days unless it's an emergency situation. And then basically as soon as it's really on the agency, as soon as they're aware that you're out, they have very little time to get you the paperwork, but you have a little more time to get it back to them. And so it will be designated retroactively, essentially. Pardon?
So if she's seeing a number of doctors, which doctor would sign?
Anybody know?
I guess I would say the one who's most in charge, if that makes sense. Like if she's seeing a primary physician and then maybe a couple specialists, I would start with a primary and see what they have to say. And then if we need more information or something, they can always get a certification filled out by one of the specialists as well.
And one of the things I was going to add on that, a lot of times in the agencies I've worked in as HR, when those emergency situations occur, if you just let HR know, you and your manager, you would start your leave, we would send you the stuff, get it back, and if we weren't able to get something back, then that's when it's not going to be approved as FMLA. But yes, a lot of agencies are going to help accommodate you in that emergency situation to be able to get out. And then I thought of a common misconception while we were sitting here talking. One of them is back on the realm of if you were maybe having a baby, that let's say the mother and the father are both state employees. Both of them are eligible for FMLA leave for that. If they meet the eligibility requirements, both parents can take leave. A lot of times what I'll see is, and I've had parents even in the same section, that you know, they were married and worked in the same section and they both got that leave benefit. And what I'll see is maybe they might split it up. The initial birth of the baby, the mom and dad will both be out for a while. For that, the dad maybe does that 15 days at that time of sick leave, and then maybe he comes back, the mother stays out longer, then when she returns to work, he might start the rest of his FMLA, and it helps extend the time before you have to put your little one in daycare and stuff like that. So there's a lot of flexibility there too, but both parents are given the benefit.
Hi, thank you. My question is, what if we are denied? What's our recourse? Where do we go?
So usually when you're denied, there might be a reason on your denial letter. Sometimes it's that the event wasn't qualifying for under the FMLA guidelines. Maybe there was we didn't get the medical certification within those 15 days, or get a request for an extension. If you weren't provided a reason for your denial, what I would do is I would ask then your HR office as to why it was denied. If it's something about missing paperwork, you could work with them to get that in. There's been situations where there is an example more recently, an employee had a grown daughter, adult daughter, that she didn't need to provide care for, but her daughter was having this lady's very first grandbaby. And so she wanted to take leave to go be there and visit and bond and, completely a normal request, totally acceptable. But it doesn't fall under the FMLA guidelines because her daughter was an adult that she didn't have power of attorney over or was providing any necessary daily care for. So there are circumstances that may arise that you think might qualify under FMLA that don't quite meet that requirement.
Yeah, exactly. What I was going to say is a lot of the denials, the law is very specific on which family members you're allowed to take leave for, and it is very limited currently. Our guidance from state HR has always been to let the employee take leave anyway. It's just not family medical job protected leave. So that's something I would try to push. That is the guidance that we give centrally. You'll see siblings who aren't covered, sometimes domestic partners who aren't covered, older children, aunts, uncles, people that you might be caring for. But if you're in one of the better places to work, I'd say ask. Most agencies are getting better about that. It's something we've been pushing the last few years.
Does FMLA in an unpaid status affect your longevity, or is it considered a break in service?
Nope. It's not considered a break in service. Your longevity is not affected. Your leave accelerated hours would be, because that counts the time that you're in a paid status. So those hours would be, but it's not considered a break in service because technically you're still with the state. You're just out for a little bit.
And to add to that, you'll also see a slower leave accrual on your sick and vacation, because the way we accrue leave each pay period is based off our paid hours, whether it's leave or working. So you'll see differences there. Amanda mentioned the leave accelerated hours, and then retirement would be the other one that it impacts all of that. So you could check maybe, sorry, I can't see. You could check maybe with retirement on that. Usually though, if you're doing a 12 weeks, it is pretty minimal on the negative impact to leave balances and things like that.
One of the coworkers I have at my agency was curious about nursing rooms and nursing time for pumping, and how to sort of communicate with managers about that.
So most managers, I think, when you go out on maternity leave and you come back, expect you to have to take those breaks. But just go to your manager, say, I'm going to have to take a couple breaks throughout the day. It is required that the state provides a closed off room with a door, electricity, so it's not like you have to do it in a closet somewhere. As long as the closet has a light, a good janitor's closet maybe. But most agencies have a designated room, or the building will have a designated room. So for example, the Mitchell building has a room on the first floor, and it's just called the mother's room. And it's a locking door. It's very private. There's nice big comfy chairs in there. There's a mini fridge in case you have to, you don't have something to keep it refrigerated. Really, as long as within reason, you're not taking 6 breaks a day for an hour each break. Managers are usually pretty lenient with that. Okay, I was like, did you take 6 breaks a day? Because that's a lot. So, and sometimes depending on the instance, like I know in the Mitchell building, there's like a calendar for that room. So you can go in there and see, is there somebody gonna be in there at 10? Okay, well, I'm gonna book the room at 10:30 for me to go. A majority of those rooms are open to the public as well, or visiting employees if you're from out of state or from even just a different building and you have to be in the Mitchell building for whatever reason, anybody can use that room. I think it's pretty nice, but I was the one who helped put it together, so I might be a little biased there.
So along those lines, DNRC has one too, and you can schedule it on the calendar. Some employees don't want to use that room. They don't want to cart up the breastfeeding pump and everything because you got to pack it. So sometimes there's a vacant office or some other arrangement. Just work through your supervisor. Most managers are very accommodating. This has been in place since 2010-ish, 12. So they know what they need to be doing. If that's not happening, definitely contact HR. And the other thing, if you're a traveler, if your job requires traveling in a state vehicle, and you're nursing, that's okay. You can take your little one with you to do that. So that doesn't happen very often. I think it's most people are like me. I can't mix work and home. It's just too opposite. So I would say that would kind of be the only other thing. And then timeline, it's for up to a year. A minimum of a year. If you need to nurse or pump longer than that, just work through your chain of command. Yeah.
You mentioned the federal regulations with regard to breastfeeding protections went in place in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just review that so that we're aware of what we should be entitled to and asking for?
Yeah. So if you can go to the U.S. Department of Labor. And they have a lot of guidance fact sheets on various laws. This one happens to be linked within the breastfeeding policy itself, so you can just follow that link. And so let's see, it was revised in 2018, but it was signed into law originally March 23rd of 2010. And similar to FMLA, it does apply to certain employers. I mean, you have to have a certain number of employees, but you're with the state, we're all one employer, you're covered. So that's good. And so really what it lined out was like, no, you can't just, tell an employee, you just go use the bathroom stall. That's private. It was just like, okay, let's get clear on, what is an appropriate space, have a lock on the door, have lighting in there, those kind of things. It does speak to the difference between exempt and non-exempt employment statuses, and the law states that it's required for non-exempt. It says it's not required for the exempt, but typically what happens with policy and law, that if it's required for one, you usually just do it for the other. In the private sector, if you're exempt, you might be paid monthly. But here at the state, we're paid hourly. So I would just say if your breaks are taking longer, just use leave or flex your schedule. Just take the time that you need to do that, so you feel like you do have a balance. Does that help answer your question?
Just to follow up, is it specify hours per day, or does it get granular in that way, or is
No,
it? Okay.
it really doesn't. I think it speaks to like a regular break time. If your employer provides, quote, breaks, then use that time to do that. If that doesn't align with your pumping schedule, work it out with your supervisor. I think communication goes a long way in those situations.
So there's a lot of professions in state government too that aren't necessarily office environments, or it's a little harder to schedule those or have a space for them. So my advice on that is just to ask, bring that up, have a conversation. I worked with the highway patrol for some of my HR experience, and so when you're a trooper and you come back, it's a It's a little bit different than maybe when I came back and had an office that I could shut the door or schedule those breaks in. So it is something that we try to ensure works for everyone. If it's something that you want to utilize and you're interested in, go to your manager, go to HR, ask those questions. Just don't hesitate to ask. Because a lot of times there's a solution that maybe you weren't even aware of that would work perfectly for your situation.
So I let my admin assistant bring her kid when he was first born, because she hadn't been with us long enough for FMLA, and well, you have to be a certain age before you can be allowed to go to daycare. When she used one of those cover things. So should I have made her go to the spare office, or was the cover thing okay?
So it's just so there's a breastfeeding policy online, and it just states that the agencies have to offer it. Like, it was fine that she just did it if she was comfortable doing that, but it is in policy that we have to provide a room in case somebody is not comfortable doing that. The room needs to be like close to the work area, so you can't send them across town or 5 blocks away every time. It states it cannot be a restroom, so that is in there. Clean and private, and then have the lighting and seating and electricity and all that kind of stuff. So you didn't have to make her go, but just as long as that was an option for her and she got to pick which one that she did, that's fine.
Is there a minimum amount of time for leave, say for a spouse that you need to help?
Are you talking like hours, days?
Like say you need a week or maybe 2 weeks, but not the full 12 weeks.
No, you can, if you just need a week, then you can get FMLA for that 1 week.
Okay. So say for instance, I had to take my husband down to the Salt Lake City VA for 10 days, and I used my vacation time. Could I have used leave time, or like how would that have worked?
So you still could have used vacation. It just would have been covered under FMLA. You could have used your comp time. It could have been leave without pay. But yeah, probably sick leave too. So you could have used any of your types of leave, just like you used your vacation, but it just would have been covered under the FMLA status.
So I could have used my sick leave even though it was for his?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the sick leave policy actually talks into more detail on what sick leave can be used for. It can be used for your children, your spouse, your parents. So those direct relationships, you can usually utilize sick leave for. If you have a question, I'd ask HR. And then there's even some things in there if you read it, and this is the general state policy that's on the site about agency discretion. If it's someone that's not included in that group, but maybe you need to care for them, that's a conversation you could have with your supervisor also. So sick leave can extend beyond utilizing it solely for yourself, even without an FMLA protection.
Before we moved from that question, can I ask, even following this example, could you explain what are the benefits to use FMLA, sick leave, for vacation time?
So you would use your sick or vacation time concurrent with FMLA. So FMLA is unpaid leave, but you can use your sick, so you don't have to take leave without pay. There is the 20 hours that was mentioned earlier. But after that, if you don't want to take leave, you don't have to. If you want to use your sick or your vacation, it really is, as long as it falls underneath like what you normally would use sick for, then you can use sick.
Basically, the agency cannot force you to use your vacation leave for a sick leave qualifying reason. That's on you, your personal decision if you want to use your vacation leave for that. You can. They can make you use sick leave if it qualifies as sick leave, but if you've got a vacation planned, it would make more sense to use your sick leave so you still have your vacation time so that you can take that personal time and have a vacation. I think it would maybe be part of the advantage.
And I think too, just to kind of think about, if you ended up not coding it as FMLA and it wasn't, you didn't use your paid time concurrent with FMLA, and then something happens in that situation and you need to be out longer, just let your human resource office know or your supervisor, because we can retro that. It's a protection for you, basically, just sort of like an insurance protection that you would have your insurance. That was good.
Yes.
So I have a follow-up to that. If you're in FMLA status and you use all of your sick leave, then can you use the sick leave direct grant fund, or would you have to tap in and use your vacation before using the sick leave fund?
You actually have to use all of your balances available. So usually that's your sick leave, vacation. If you have any comp time earned, you have to use all that before you're eligible for the sick leave fund or direct grants. You don't have to go without pay, so you have to be out for 10 consecutive days and used up all your balances. So if you just happen to use up your last balance on day 10, then on day 11 we can pull from the sick leave fund or use grants.
I just had a quick question. Can you guys elaborate on the prenatal care through Allegiance? I think it's one thing that a lot of people don't know about or don't take advantage of. And so if you could elaborate on that so then more people are aware, that'd be great.
That's such a great question, Dawn. So, yes. So there is a Healthy Star Baby program, I think is what it's called, through our insurance. It's changed a little bit from what we used to have, but if you register, I believe, within your first trimester then, and you stay through it throughout your whole pregnancy, you have to fill out a form each trimester and maybe do a call with a nurse. You can get, I think the total would be $250 at the end. If you go in your second trimester, you can still get a benefit. I think it's smaller. So what it is it's about doing check-ins with a nurse, doing the paperwork, and then you get a kind of a reward, if you will, in the end. There's also, and it may have changed a little bit, but there is breast pump reimbursement. So if that's something that you're going to be doing, you could contact Healthcare and Benefits, you can contact the insurance directly, and you can get all of that reimbursed. Or actually, when I did it, it was supplied to me. I didn't have to buy it and submit reimbursement. I just worked with them. I picked one of their options, and it was paid for and shipped to my house. So there are some benefits through our health benefits system for that. I would recommend going to the benefits site. They have everything broke out there. And it's under, I think there's actually a whole section devoted to that where it'll provide more information. It would give you the links along with any timelines or requirements you would need to fulfill to get those benefits. So if you go to their general site, it's outlined there.
I was just going to say, I'm 26 weeks pregnant, and you're right. You get the $125 if you register in your second trimester, and they do reimbursements now for the breast pump, and it's up to $500, which I was surprised. But you do have to buy it and have a receipt from Target, Amazon, those kind of things, which I thought. And then all of the components, breast pads, nipple, butter, all of those things that they'll reimburse for as well. So, but I had a question about specifically, so I'm enrolled in the sick leave fund, and I'm tracking right now because you have to put in quite the work in the Excel spreadsheet to figure out all your leaves. And so I think for me, I will be probably just about a week and a half, 2 weeks short of the full 12-week paid period. So I have a question about, do I have to contact you guys to access this sick leave while I'm still out, or will it just kick over and roll over?
So there is a request form for the sick leave fund. What I advise my employees to do is to, if there's a chance that you might need it, fill out the form before you leave, and then Your HR should be kind of tracking, or your payroll department, somebody should be tracking your spreadsheet or your timesheet. And then if they see that, oh, she's out of balances and she's not quite back, then we'll use that form that you already filled out to complete it. If you don't fill out that form before you leave and you're kind of looking at your own timesheet, then we can definitely email it to you, your personal address, or mail it to your home address, and then you can fill it out and send it back. But there is a form to fill out to get the hours, to request hours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So to add to that, just quickly, you mentioned that it'd be maybe toward the end of your 12 weeks. And part of the fund and grants is exhausting all of your leave. But just to throw another, thing in there. Normally, some agencies, and a lot of the time when you look at the policies, sick leave is only approved for the first 6 weeks. So like for me, when I was on maternity leave, I never actually got to utilize our benefits for sick leave fund or direct grants because I had to exhaust through all of my leave. When I did that, I was just maybe a month or so out from returning, and I no longer qualified for sick leave use because I didn't have a medical reason. I was now entering into that phase where I was bonding with my baby, because the first 6 months you're medically recovering, or 6 weeks, sorry. Well, I'm still recovering, and my youngest is 3. So the first 6 weeks is about you're like physically recovering from the act of bringing that child into the world. And then the next 6 weeks are more about bonding unless there's a medical reason. So if you want to use sick leave past that initial 6 weeks, just make sure you have that medical certification from your medical provider stating that you need that and what the medical reason is.
Any final burning questions? Oh, 2. Okay, let's be quick. Super.
If you're adopting a child, does that mean that you have to use 12 weeks of vacation or comp? Since you're not recovering from a medical procedure?
Sorry.
I guess any of us can answer that. You qualify for parental leave, and the parental leave statute says that you can use sick leave for 3 weeks. So you get the 3 weeks, and then after that, you're going to have to pull some other leave together, at least under the current statutes.
Just real quick, are you required to fill out FMLA papers if you're gone a certain amount of time?
So once the agency is aware that you're out for something that qualifies under FMLA, it is our responsibility to designate it as such. Usually when we're looking at what qualifies under FMLA, it's obviously the event and then how long you're going to be out. A lot of times it's if you're going to be out for more than 3 days, or if it's a recurring thing, maybe you have appointments every month where you're going to have to miss work. So those 2 things are considered, and then we would contact you with the paperwork, and you would need to return it. If you didn't return it, then your FMLA could be denied, and your overall leave request could be denied, in all honesty. I feel like I'm forgetting something here. No, I think that's it. It's not really, and that is a common misconception that it's optional. Once the agency has enough information to know that it is qualifying, we can designate. A lot of times if it's for yourself, maybe you are going out for a surgery, let's say, and you don't submit the medical up front, a lot of times in order to return to your work, you're going to need to have a release to duty so that we know you're good to come back, the doctor's cleared you. So maybe you supply that instead of the medical certification up front. Do you guys want to add anything?
So Carol Ann real quick said that sometimes we require a medical certificate or a medical release to come back to work. That usually isn't the case if you go out on maternity. Right. So just, you don't have to go to your doctor to have them release you back to work after giving birth. Just wanted to put that out there.
So you also usually don't need to provide medical certification to go out on regular maternity leave. We don't ask you to prove that through a paper. We usually kind of figure that out with time.
Thank you so much for attending today. Thank you, panelists, for coming and answering all of these questions. These were great questions. I hope this was all valuable to everyone who attended. I would just let you know that we are going to have our session in February, like I mentioned, where we're going to be focusing on retirement and related issues. So watch for that forthcoming. Do you know the date off the top of your head, Patty? I want to say it's February 12th. That sounds right. So that information will be forthcoming. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting and being interested in all of these things. It's great to see so many people here today. Have a good one.
Oh, sorry, Emma.